the smartest analysis I saw post those congressional elections was sort of looking at the overlay of where both things were on the ballot. For instance, where there was a Secretary of State running and voting rights or January 6th, or was a congressional race with election denialism that therefore was kind of on the ballot, and a governor's race, for instance, or of course a congressional race where it looked like Roe versus Wade was on the ballot, where both things happened. That it was I'm sure it wasn't a perfect map, but it seemed a really powerful indicator of where Democrats overperformed uh, mid-presidential term expectations. And you also said something about Donald Trump. Something I noticed about Donald Trump when he was running the first time, not running against Biden, but when he was running against Hillary Clinton. That much of his campaign, much of what he was talking about was the corruption of Washington.
Drain the swamp.
Much of what he was talking about was a different song out of Ross Perot's hymnal, which, by the way, had overlap with Ralph Nader's hymnal, which, by the way, had notes in Barack Obama's campaign. Although, to your point, candidates who become successful, even with that message, haven't always succeeded in fulfilling those promises. And we've seen that at the national level as well as the state level. So I'm with you. It's one of the reasons I'm a fan is that I do see the tide turning. I do think the commitment. I mean, women's suffrage didn't happen on the first crack either, right? It took over and over and over again. In my state, I think it was 5 times before women's suffrage passed in my state. I want to ask about how it's impacting your work, how it's manifesting in your work, and including in fundraising. Because one of the challenges, so I had to raise money before, right? And I've raised money for pro-democracy organizations and for political campaigns, as well as for startup companies, and including trying to help with campaigns to do campaign finance restrictions, right? Including money in politics, money in politics, ballot measures, right? Local initiatives, and there's always sort of a tricky thing to say, and I don't find it all that tricky, but I understand how it can feel that way to say we get money out of politics. A line I don't like, by the way, which I can say why. And then the other hand says that's why I need you to give me 10 grand.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think about and I don't think it's that hard, right? I don't think it's that hard to be honest, to be able to say, yeah, it requires resource to do this work. We want to make sure that people with resource don't have overweening power, not because the resource isn't important, but because it is so very important. I don't think that's that asynchronous, but I'm interested in how it's manifesting in your work. Are you seeing greater interest in the Brennan Center? Is your work harder or easier?
The Brennan Center is bigger than we've ever been. We have a staff of about 160 now.
Wow.
We're affiliated with NYU Law School, but we're our own entity. We raise our own money. There's considerable support from donors. We actually get overwhelmingly our support from people, from individuals, not from foundations, for example. About 70% of our support is from individuals. We now have about 40,000 donors, which is a lot more than we used to. But the biggest measure to me of the public's hunger for this stuff is our ability to get our ideas and these issues out into the world. We now have, for example, 350,000 subscribers to our newsletters. And this is not spam, this is opt-in. You have to check a box and say you want this stuff. And it's pretty, nutritious spam in the sense that it's very, we send out all our material with all its footnotes and all the legal and political science heaviness that we sometimes have in our work, and people are really, really engaged. And that's
eat your broccoli. You serve them peas, broccoli,
and we give our reports deliberately boring titles just to make the point clear. But it's so I think the public understands it, and I think the point you made about how to talk about money in politics, because I certainly don't ever want us to lose touch with how central that issue is. I mean, in some ways, some of the garish restrictions on voting need to be fought, but they're at least visible to the naked eye. Some of the impact of money, of course, is not only felt in the elections, but certainly felt in the outcomes of elections and in the policies that come out of government. When we talk about money in politics, I emphatically agree. It's both, it's a mistake and it's not achievable to say we've got to get money out of politics. There's always going to be money in politics, but the question is, where is it coming from, and what kind of consequences does it have, and does it create a completely uneven playing field, and does it lead to policies that favor just further enriching the wealthy? And so that one of the reasons, therefore, that we strongly support small donor public financing as the most important solution. And we just had a pretty significant win on that in New York State, in what was the most significant legislative change after Citizens United, which is we have a system now that's going into effect in New York where small contributions get a multiple match.
Yep.
And it hasn't started yet, but and a number of the state legislators, upon realizing, wait a minute, we did what? Tried to back out of it, but nevertheless, it's going to go into effect now, I'm happy to say. And that doesn't pretend to get all the money out, but what it does is it gives smaller donors and ordinary people a much potentially louder, amplified voice. So I think that's a kind of an empowering and a pro-people way of talking about it. It's also constitutionally better than, kind of, as the Supreme Court has ruled, they don't like the kinds of restrictions on contributions and other things and spending that that fall afoul of their doctrines. But at least so far, this is something they have said is constitutional.